More than 80% of the population in Ukraine is traumatized now. What does it mean living in a country at war? There is a huge need for the population living in Ukraine that is growing, a need that is not only material but spiritual. This situation is particularly difficult for the local church. People need to heal their wounds. Unfortunately, the situation is getting worse in Ukraine, even though the news that we receive talk often about politics, about war, military situation on the field. There is a huge need for the population living in Ukraine that is growing, a need that is not only material but spiritual, psychological assistance, as most of the bishops that we met during our frequent visits to the country have stressed. People need to heal their wounds before any other need. Since the beginning of the war, right one day after the beginning of the war on February 24, 2022, ACN was present to support the Church with emergency aid for all the dioceses, eparchies in the country. We provided help to priests, sisters, to communities, and a huge amount of funds were also given to the IDPs, the internally displaced people in Ukraine, which raised up to the number of 7 million in 2022 in the first 5-6 months of the war. In 2023, this help has evolved. We didn't help anymore for this emergency, but we continued to be beside the local church in this great challenge that they're facing. The support to priests, sisters, to seminarians, more than 600 that we help every year. And we started also to support a program of trauma healing for many of the people that returned from war or the families that faced a very difficult situation because of the prolonged war in the country. Sometimes it's difficult to understand what does it mean really living in a country at war. And ACN, with the visits and with the reception of many guests at our headquarters in Germany, could witness how dramatic is the situation for individual people, not just for one people, for the people in Ukraine, for each single people living in this dramatic situation. Usually we focus on the events, on the battlefield, on the global economic situation in a country at war. But we must not forget, and this is the mission of ACN, to accompany people in their daily work, in their daily life. People that lost parents, relatives, friends, or they live in a constant uncertainty because they are not far from the battlefield, from the front line, or because they don't know when the family that is living abroad could come back in the country. And this situation is particularly difficult for the local church. We know witnesses of many priests that have to celebrate funerals almost every day for soldiers that were killed on the battlefield. This is a dramatic situation. It is not in the news, but this is exactly what ACN is understanding by following the life of the church in Ukraine. The whole region of eastern Ukraine is still constantly under high pressure. Not only the regions very close to the front line, but the whole region on the left bank of the Dnipro River are actually living in very difficult condition. If we think that there is no possibility for children to go to school, they still, after 2 years, have just online lessons, and they have, when they can gather, they can always interrupt their lessons because of the fire, the alarms, the bombing alarms. We can understand how it's very difficult to go on with daily life in these places. we should also consider that other regions, also in the south, are constantly bombed, under attack, and there are victims also in the regions of Kherson, on Odessa, as well as in the east, in the Donetsk or the Kharkiv region. We received today a visit of a bishop from Ukraine, from the eparchy of Buchach, that told us that the Greek Catholic Church, the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, has developed a program, a kind of partnership between each one of the eparchies in West Ukraine with at least one parish in the east of the country. So they adopt one parish in the region of Kharkiv, Odessa or Donetsk, and there they just not build a new church or just provide some help to the people, but even send a priest from their jurisdictions to be present there and to build a new community. There was a very powerful witness about a community in Izium, a city in the east of the country. It was for 6 months under Russian occupation. Before the war, there was just a small Ukrainian Greek Catholic community of up to 20 people. Now, after this horrible experience of the occupation, more than 150 people are there. So there is a growth of the communities that need everything. This is just one of the examples of how the Church is caring about these regions. We can add many other cases also of the Latin Church in Kharkiv, as well as in Zaporizhia, where help to the population living 20-30 kilometers far from the front line is crucial for the survival of the communities. The Church has been active from the first day in helping people to have hope. People that came from eastern Ukraine and had to start a new life in a place where they didn't have a house, they didn't have a job, and in many cases where the families were separated, with the men in the front and the women in the country, in another place, or even abroad with the children. This was a situation, and this is still a situation that originated many traumas. When we had a meeting with Monsignor Shevchuk, the head of the Greek Catholic Church in Kiev, last year, he told us that official statistics were mentioning that more than 80% of the population in Ukraine is traumatized now. And he was telling us this last year. I would say that now, with no exception, people suffer a kind of trauma in the country. Soldiers that come back from the front, when they manage to be without visible wounds, they are often traumatized. They cannot start again the life in the family as it was before. That brought also to separations in the family, because the man came back being another person after the traumas that they lived. If we think what can mean just to stay in company of other people and then just missing them after one day, seeing many scenes of murder, of people that die suddenly without any explanation, we can have an idea of which trauma these people can have. And this is something that comes to the whole family they have. This is the mission of the Church in Ukraine, to support them, to heal and to stay together in spite of this situation. The Church supports also on the front line with the army, with the presence of military chaplains. We know that many of the soldiers, much more than in the past, go to confession quite frequently, because they know that they don't know how long their life could be. And the presence of a priest with them is absolutely important to save their souls. Sometimes people that never had an experience with the Church before, they find conversion in this so challenging, dramatic situation. This is often the opportunity for people to discover the presence of God in their life. It happened in the front line as well as with many people that escaped from the places close to the front line or in occupied regions, that were hosted in religious houses where with sisters or priests they had the first experience of meeting Jesus Christ. We estimated that last year about 30% of our aid went to eastern Ukraine, which is quite significant if we consider that most of the houses of the structure of the church in Ukraine is present in the west, where the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church is very strong and solid with a historical presence, and even the Latin Catholic Church with Polish origins had a base since centuries. In the east, most of the population were either Orthodox or atheistic. In this situation, it's very important to see how the church is approaching these people and giving them a kind of hope, allowing them to have a contact with religion, which is something that they never experienced before. Our help is made concrete also with through vehicles. It is very significant help, more than 1 million euros that we provided last year as well as in 2022. Ukraine is a very wide country, and especially in the east where the communities of the church are quite small and isolated, it's very important to have at disposal a vehicle to visit all of them. And there are many priests that even in dangerous areas every day they face this challenge and they move and reach this community to support them with material aid, but also with the comfort of the prayer. Right after the beginning of the war, 2022, there was a huge wave of people that left the country or moved to the west, and the church hosted them in their structures. Seminaries were even closed in order to people live there for a certain period. Seminarians even served them instead of studying because of the emergency. They provided everything to them, from food, medicines, and what was needed. At the moment, the situation has improved in the sense that most of the IDPs in the country, in Ukraine, found a place to live. Ukrainian people is very devoted also to work, to service, people that want to give their contribution, and they then just not like to stay and receive everything without giving. So this solidarity was activated, but these people, even though now they are not hosted anymore in church structures, with the exception of thousands of people that are sick or too old to be independent, most of these people continue to have a relation with the church. They started in that period, and even though now they work, they found an accommodation, they still keep this strong relation with the church. ACN has moved from the support to IDPs to the support of trauma healing last year, as I mentioned before. We had a significant project for the establishment of so-called hot points, places in the middle of some areas in central Ukraine where most of the people moved. Not houses, but centers where people can find in winter hot drink or internet, or a place where they can just simply chat with other people that were moved from eastern Ukraine and lived in a completely new environment without knowing people. So these places were kind of a place of socialization for them, usually run by the church institution there, a parish, even in places where the church has not yet a church for celebrations. But just to have a reference point, they came in the main square of small villages or suburban areas of big cities, just to welcome these people and to form a kind of community. And many of these people that we met when we visited Kiev, for example, last year, witnessed that they found a big comfort, sometimes decisive, for their life in a moment of great pain, of great difficulty, because someone was ready to listen to them. Not just provide some food, but staying there and gather and know about their life and their efforts. Helping the priest, as well as helping religious sisters, but especially for the priests that are very numerous in Ukraine, it's helping a whole community. The priest is a reference point for many small communities living in cities as well as in rural areas, and it's the person that is providing this attention. It's not just his work is not just limited to the liturgical aspects, which are very important in the tradition of the Ukrainian Church, but it's really a person that can aggregate people and can give them hope through staying together. In many cases, priests cannot provide with their usual aid because the communities where they live do not have the means in this moment, in this terrible situation, also economically speaking, that Ukraine is living. So our support, even though in some cases symbolic, in other more significant, is something that helps a lot the church going on. When we help a priest, the priest is not just taking the money for himself. He has his needs, but in many cases also helps the population, their people, to afford a situation of difficulty. During our trips in Ukraine, several times we visited the countries in the last 2 years. We have met a lot of congregation of sisters, mostly Ukrainians, but also coming from abroad, a lot of Polish sisters too, that devote their life to support the people. Sometimes they just provide a very important serving, which is the listening of people. As Mary did with Jesus, just close to the cross at the moment of his death, these people in the moment of the major pain that these people are suffering are close to them. It's not just a matter of doing brilliant things, and the sisters do this also because they are much involved in the social field too. In many cases they provide this very important first step for people to find hope, which is listening to the stories, to the dramas that people are living. Yeah. We had a good witness of a community of Benedictine sisters in Lviv, contemplative sisters that, in spite of being contemplative during the first times of the war, hosted almost 80 IDPs coming from eastern Ukraine, breaking exceptionally their contemplative life in order to support them. And after 2 years, we visited again the sisters. There's a couple coming from eastern Ukraine. They were atheistic. They just discovered the faith by living in this convent. Quite an aged couple that decided to marry in the church now. And these are small achievements of God that sisters allow just with their presence and with their capacity to comfort and to welcome people. Children are the victims of this war. We think not only of the children, about the children now in Ukraine, but also we talk about the millions of refugees in Europe. We supported summer camps for them in Ukraine as well as in some countries of Europe too. In a country where they didn't know the language, they didn't know the culture at all. They came just with her mother in a very, very challenging situation, without having news about the father that was at war in many cases, or could not just leave the country. As you know, old men between 18 and 60 years cannot leave the country, as there is still in Ukraine a martial law because of the war. So helping these children is helping the future of Ukraine, hoping that they could come back to the country in many cases. We have also a significant program for the children in Ukraine, for summer camps, and in some cases children will be also involved in, with the family in trauma healing initiatives. Ukraine was in 2022, as well as last year, the country which ACN supported most worldwide, and we will still continue to help the Church for their basic needs. We don't have now concrete emergency relief programs because we focus on the daily life of the Church. It's very important to let the Church continue serving the people in Ukraine. 30% of our help was given last year for religious sisters, for priests, for their life support. Another 30% was given for renovation and constructions of places where people can meet. We should understand that Ukraine is still a relatively young church that came resurrected from the ashes after the communism and had practically no structures, as all the places were confiscated. Most of the places were confiscated. So still this process has not come to an end. It's important to support them also for renovation of their structures. We have then a quite significant aid for the vehicles, about 15% of the whole amount for Ukraine, and the rest given for pastoral initiatives. A significant aid is given for the seminarians, more than 600 that we support in the whole country, in 10 different seminaries, both from the Latin and the Greek Catholic Church. Another important aid is for the summer camps, and a growing concern will be this year, as it was already partially last year, the recovering from trauma healing. The style of aid given by ACN in this case is always aimed to consider both the pastoral aspect, the spiritual one, and the psychological aspect together. So we provide support also with the help of specialists, but with projects that are thought and implemented by the structures of the local church. It's not just a service that is given, but really a way to let these people feel part of a community, the community of the Catholic Church. Ukraine needs your help now as it was in the past years. We don't know how this war will end, we don't know when it will end, but there are people that now need your support. Bring God's love to Ukraine.